Senator Nesbitt, I wanted to ask you about a specific revenue stream for law enforcement. We've seen that proposed in the governor's budget where she wants to take a specific pot of money and instead of just putting it right into revenue sharing, put it into law enforcement. Is that sustainable in the long term, or are we just going to be doing that because we got a little bit more cash than normal?
I mean, that's always the question, is what's one-time funding. You guys have to deal with it in your own counties, and especially with some of the one-time dollars that are out there, is what can be ongoing, that's programmatic and service related, and what is one time that should be going into infrastructure or capital improvements. You guys have to deal with that with your budgets every year. And that was, I think, last year is something that Mayor Duggan has pushed pretty hard on a law enforcement, trust fund. The challenge is that I brought up with them is like, are you rewarding some areas that have higher crime rates by getting more revenue? How do you incentivize it in the long term to make sure that crimes are going down in some of these, urban areas? There's some real challenges in our rural areas with, whether it's drug or fentanyl issues. How do you, also help out on some of these law enforcement and sheriff jobs that are having to be done around the state? And so I do think there's a balance. Is we have some urban areas with a high crime rate. How do you work? Is that better to have the Michigan State Police come in and help coordinate and help cooperate in that area? Or is it better to actually have a kind of a fund available each year for those higher crime areas? And how do you make sure that there's a balance, that it's not just one size fit all in a state area? And so I know something where last year they tried to get it done, didn't happen. I'm still open to having those conversations, but I'm just, those are some of the questions that I'm asking right now.
Representative Fitzgerald, do you believe that a law enforcement funding stream from the state should be encompassed in a revenue sharing as one total package, or should it be broken out and should it be two different funding streams?
I don't know if I can speak necessarily to whether it should be carved in or a different track by itself, but I think that the Public Safety Trust Fund that came before us really was something that was, I think, developed in partnership with law enforcement, with local officials, and in understanding that our responsibility is for the health, safety, and well-being of Michigan residents. Yes, there may be areas that have higher crime rates that need more services, but there's a performance metric that's baked into this trust fund saying that if you're actually not reducing those crime numbers, then you're going to receive less funding. We want to make sure that there is accountability toward more or less productivity of those dollars, actually reducing crime and seeing those metrics come forward in those communities. We want to make sure that crime reduction is the top priority of these dollars, and so we're holding accountable those who cannot, back it up or put the money where their mouth is.
Representative Filler, I know that the Speaker of the House, Joe Tate, has put law enforcement as a very top priority for him as far as getting more money into law enforcement. Why has it not been easy for him to get that agenda through with the Republicans?
The first time, I believe it was a Farhat bill. Do you remember this? It was a Farhat bill. And the first time the bill was brought up, I would say it was probably one of the best conversations that we've had in the Republican caucus. I mean, in our caucus room, when you ask a question, the name goes on the board, and there were probably 20 names that went up, and these were really relevant questions. A lot of these people had been county commissioners, had maybe been part of MAC, and they had a lot of questions because they said, hey, we all support law enforcement. We all support public safety, but we're looking at the specifics of this bill, and some of this money goes to places, it goes to a social worker. Is that the proper place for law enforcement funding? And so when we delved into the bill, that's when there started to be some pushback and then some negotiations with Representative Farhat and the stakeholder community. And so I actually viewed it as a really positive process. That doesn't always happen in the legislature. Sometimes people just say, no go, it's a bad bill. But I feel like that was a really good process, and so I have a lot of faith going forward that something will be worked out.